Hello and welcome to an all-new episode of Anime Brain Freeze. We are your easy breezy hosts.
I am John.
And I'm CC, and when there's just too much cool anime to watch, we got you covered. Today, we traverse the realms of magic and imagination. First, John will talk about the remade anime adaptation of the fantasy light novel Sorcerous Stabber Orphen. He will also compare it to the previous version and tell you which adaptation fares better in his eyes. And after that, I will join the three girls from the Film Research Club and their quest to fulfill their dreams of making their first own anime in Keep Your Hands Off Eizouken. Sounds like a fun little episode, so don't pause the pod. We'll be right back. Well, we can't get to our reviews just yet because 2020 is a bitch, and it continues to be. And we sadly have to talk about a person from the anime community that just recently passed away and that I felt like saying a few words about and highlighting their work. And that person is Zac Bertschy, the executive editor for the editorial content on Anime News Network. Aside, both you and I, John, frequent and have frequented in the past. A lot of articles and editorials I link in our show notes are from that site. Some are even written, or were even written by Zac Bertschy. And he also started a podcast for that site, for Anime News Network, which was, incidentally, the first podcast I ever listened to, I think. Pretty sure. And which sparked my interest in this medium. So it's not an exaggeration to say that without Zac, this little show wouldn't exist, probably. And yeah, I just wanted to say a few words on the influence, the person that I experienced him to be. We weren't close friends or anything, or like barely acquaintances. But through listening to Ancast and following him on Twitter and his work on Anime News Network, I caught some of his content in social spaces, and I also took part in his movie streams that he did pretty regularly. And yeah, so I talked to him a few times during the group chats there, and that's pretty much all the exchange that we had. But, you know, you feel like if you constantly listen to a person talking, and if you exchange a few words with them, you feel like they're at least part of your life in a way. So I felt like, okay, let's say a few words in memoriam for that person, that kind of important part of the, at least American anime community in a way, when it comes to his work for Anime News Network. And there is an article on that site right now that talks about him in detail, and I'll link that in the show notes, of course. I always experienced Zac and his writing and everything, or he came across to me as a person and in his writing as one of the most passionate people when it came to anime that I've ever seen. If you want to find a person that is really passionate about a medium, find yourself an article or a podcast episode where Zac talks about a show that he loved. For example, Neon Genesis Evangelion, recently Promare, and even more recently, Keep Your Hands Off Eizouken, a show I will review later in this episode. And you will see a person that loves anime and knows how to convey that love, and that enthusiasm that he brought across in his content was infectious. And is probably one of the reasons why I felt like I wanted to start something in that vein and wanted to convey my opinions and my feelings about this medium that I really like, and asking and finding a willing co-conspirator in John for that. And so that's definitely one of the aspects of Zac that I remember, like him being one of the most passionate anime-loving people out there and putting everything about that in his work, and also someone who wasn't afraid to speak his mind and, you know, stand in for his ideals, which he pretty often stepped on certain people's toes, I guess, maybe. But I always respected him for standing in for what he believed in. And that not only counts for his work-related stuff in regards to anime, but also political views and views on people and everything and what's important in life and stuff like that. So a lot of our views were aligned in that regard. So I felt I could understand at least his point of view for most of the stuff he said. He was also incredibly funny. That's one of the things that had me sticking around during the movie streams and everything. A very dark sense of humor sometimes, but that was pretty up my alley. Just, you know, very dark, dry sense of humor often enough. And yeah, that kept me entertained. John, have you had any contact with Zac Bertschy on Twitter or anything? Or have you read some of his writing or listened to an episode of Endcast?
I had read a little bit of his writing on ANN, you know, here and there, probably, honestly, not as frequently as you. And I did follow him on Twitter, so I got a little bit of insight into his character. And, you know, I liked seeing what he had to say. And, you know, he had that slightly off-color sense of humor.
Yes.
So, you know, I know you, back when you had a less regular sleeping schedule for your time zone, you would always sit in on Can You Survive, and you would talk about, you know, the garbage ass movies he would show and talk about. So, you know, I know you had a lot more direct contact with him, you know, through that at least. So,
yes.
But yeah, you know, I definitely respected him in what he did for the, I still respect him in what he did for the, Western anime community. And, you know, it's just seeing everyone who's had a lot of just really great things to say about him. Like, in particular, I was reading some of what Miles from Crunchyroll was saying about how, I guess, they sort of saw each other as rivals, but they were friends.
Yeah.
I guess
truly anime relationship.
I guess there were some points where he had Zac had poached some talent from underneath Miles, and he was like, "Oh, God damn you, son of a bitch!" And Zac would just shoot him this like very sly smile, like.
Yeah, and everyone that has come out on Twitter and shared a few words and memories has said that Zac often turned their life around in regards to giving them motivation to go into anime writing or egg them on to become better at what they do. And that it was a dream, like them meeting him for the first time at a panel or something, and then later actually being offered a job at Anime News Network, being able to write about anime. And a lot of these people are still writing editorials there right now and produce great content, and that can obviously be attributed to Zac as well, having such an influence on the people and motivating them to do something with the passion they have for this medium, just like he did for me. And I don't want this to be just like the super long eulogy, and I apologize in advance if this news bit sounds super disjointed, but this is an improvised impromptu recording that we are doing 3 days after our actual recording. But I felt like something about Zac should go into our newest episode. And I wanted to express my condolences to his family and loved ones and everyone that knew him. And if you want to witness some of that passion that he had, try to find articles he wrote about Evangelion, try to find something he wrote about Promare, like I said before. And he actually wrote the reviews on Anime News Network, I think, about Keep Your Hands Off Eizouken. So I'm going to link those in our show notes as well. Definitely check those out. It's great stuff. And if you want to listen to more anime podcast stuff, definitely check out Endcast if you haven't yet for some reason. I can't imagine someone listening to Anime Brain Freeze first and not, although I'm saying that, and two of my friends have listened to my show and not the biggest anime podcast besides Anime World Order, I guess, out there. But yeah, still, check out Endcast. I recommend the Super Nerds episodes where he is joined by Mike Toole and Daryl Surratt. And those are always super fun. Just them just nerding off about anime. And I also recommend the Revenge of episodes, which is basically him and 3 other guests talking about their favorite anime from each given decade. So there's a Revenge of the 80s, Revenge of the 90s, the aughts, and the 10s right now. So you definitely should check those out there. Those are super entertaining and interesting, informative, and everything. So yeah, highly recommended. Yeah, I want to end on a kind of personal note here. I don't know, John, do you have anything more to add?
I don't think so.
Okay, so I just want to say that when I first started listening to Endcast, when I came to take part in Can You Survive, the movie stream that he did, I was in a very, very dark and difficult time in my life. And those 2 things were 2 of the anchors for me to reality, to sanity, and they gave me like a couple of rays of hope, of sunshine and levity and normalcy. And I don't know if I would have made it through that time without those 2 things. That might sound cheesy, and they're definitely not the only things that helped me keep going, but they were there. And being able to just actually wake up each day on a super weird time schedule because it was really fucked. Because I was kind of tuned to fucking Pacific Standard Time, I guess, at that time. And then later in the day, actually taking part in Can You Survive, or listening to the newest episode of Endcast while doing some work or stuff like that. That helped a lot. That brought structure, some kind of weird fucking structure to my life, and gave me joy, gave me happiness, hanging out with like-minded people, joking around, and just having a lot of laughs. And like I said, I don't know if I would be here today talking to you if that didn't happen. And for that, I will be eternally grateful to Zac. And sadly, I am filled with the biggest regret because I never took the time to tell him that beforehand. And now it's too late. And that really sucks. Mm-hmm. And I just still, I want him to know that he did a lot of good things for a lot of people. If anything is obvious from the last 24 hours, it's that. That's basically all I want to say and convey. And yeah, thanks, Zac. Wherever you are, I hope you are at peace, because you deserve at least that, man.
All right, so Orphen was one of those series I had always been sort of curious about. The original show aired in 1998, so it's been a minute since Orphen has probably crossed anyone's thoughts.
About 22 years.
Ish, yeah. But yeah, so what's it about? It's a light novel. Oh boy.
That can, that can mean catastrophe, but it doesn't have to.
Yeah, that's true. And I mean, light novels have definitely, I feel like there's been a shift, especially, probably within the last, 10 years, where everyone and their brother, mother, father, sister wanted to write an isekai story.
Oh, yeah.
But, Orphen is not that. It's just set in its own fantasy world, and that's cool. That's neat. We got our own world of sword and sorcery. So, in a world of magic and monsters, Crelancello Finral. You know what? We're just going to cut out the last name. In a world of magic and monsters, Crelancello and his foster sister Azalee were once promising students of sorcery, prodigies at the famous Tower of Fangs. But an experiment gone horribly wrong warps Azalee's appearance, trapping her in the form of a dragon. Elders at the tower, more interested in preserving their reputation rather than their students' lives, drive off the transformed Azali and cover up the incident. Outraged, Crilancelo strikes out on his own, taking up the new name of Orphen and vowing to return Azali to her normal state. 5 years later, Orphen's quest has stalled, but a chance encounter brings him face to face with Azali again, and he still has no way to restore her body. With a hostile group of sorcerers hunting her down, he may be running out of time. The past and present collide as Orphen tries to find out how to save Azali from their former teachers and friends.
First of all, sorry to interrupt you. I'm not going to cut out that last name. Because that's a fucking aspiring to Tomino shit name.
Yes,
I love it.
I'll try and say it clean again. Crilancelo Finrandi.
That's fucking amazing.
And Azali's full name is Azali Kate Sith because sure, why not?
Oh yeah.
They don't really touch on last names a lot moving forward. That's whatever. That's fine.
Mm-hmm. Well, that's
try for the best.
Yeah.
Try for the best so I don't sound like a dummy trying to read names. So this show, obviously, like we said, is a remake of an anime from 22-ish years ago. The light novel has its origins from 1994, and it was written by one Yoshinobu Akita, and this work was basically his big claim to fame. I feel like let's talk about the original first before I really dive into the new one. Because the original was animated by our friends and sometimes punching bags, JC Staff. JC Staff back then were about as good at cutting corners as they are now.
Okay.
So you can take that for what you will at the moment. So the original show had 2 seasons, and the first season revolves largely around the hunt for Azali, who in her dragon form comes to be known as Bloody August, for just this big, fearsome, terrifying dragon that just kind of appears and disappears whenever it so pleases. And Orphen is on the hunt for this relic called the Sword of Baltanders, which may or may not have the power to restore Azali to her human form.
What gives him that idea that sword can do that? Is it like in an ancient tome or something?
Because it's screw it. Because we don't see it up to that point in the original adaptation, because the reboot moves at a different pace and it shows some events in different order, but the sword is kind of what set things in motion in the first place.
Ah, okay.
That's what was part of the impetus of this big magic experiment that went horribly, terribly wrong. Mm-hmm. And now it's in the hands of this one family, the Everlasting family. And we sort of open on Orphen weirdly creeping on Cleo Everlasting and her sister, trying to see if they indeed have the sword in their possession, just standing in a tree with a pair of binoculars looking into their house like, bro, you know how bad that looks, right, bro?
That's one of the things that feels a bit old-timey, I guess. It was one of the things I picked up on I don't know if that was only in the old show or in the new one.
Yes.
Okay.
It was not in the new show.
Okay. But the new one also felt kind of old-timey in certain ways. But I'm glad they changed some things.
I mean, they changed a lot of things, but we'll get
interested
to that.
To hear about it.
And Orphen is accompanied by his disciple, whose name his disciple's name is Magic.
Okay, sure, why not?
But it's not with a G. No, it's M-A-J-I-C. So it's not magic, but it's magic. Fucking
sure.
So I feel like moving forward, I will do my best to distinguish Magic the character from Magic the concept by referring to the character as magic and the concept as sorcery, because that actually makes the most sense.
Yes.
Because they talk about in-universe about how there's black sorcery and white sorcery. Black sorcery is like, your actual.
He is the Sorcerous Stabber after all.
Yes. Yeah, black sorcery has to deal with like a lot. It's difficult to explain. Like a lot of schools of magic, like your attacking magic, your healing and repair magic as well. Well, whereas white sorcery is more like mental manipulation and like other stuff like that. It's strange the way they break it up, but in universe it kind of makes sense.
And it sounds interesting and a bit more varied than your typical white magic, black magic. That's it. Maybe summons here and there or something like that.
Yeah, I mean it's not your Final Fantasy magic setup.
Right.
But yeah, they are kind of sort of creeping on Cleo and her sister trying to get this sword, and Cleo sends out these two little shitbirds, Vulcan and Dorton, and them being shitbirds is a recurring theme throughout. Thanks.
Shitbirds in what way, though? I mean, are they like fun, or are they like, oh no, not these guys again?
It's definitely the latter.
Oh no.
So Vulcan and Dorton are just, they're like constantly in debt to Orphen, but Vulcan, who is I think they're painted up to be twins, but Vulcan is like the commanding, annoying, Orphen is actually our enemy. I'm going to be a jerk to him no matter what. And I kind of feel bad for Dorton because he's just kind of sort of going along for the ride, but he's also not doing anything to discourage his brother's bad behavior. So,
okay, yeah.
Guilty
by association.
Yes, exactly. And there's a few episodes where, you sort of see Dorton sort of like, oh, okay, maybe he's not such a bad kid. Oh, wait, nope, next episode, never mind. He's just enabling his brother all over again. And it's like, fuck, God. So, like I said, the impetus for this story is trying to get the Sword of Baltanders. And Orphen ends up eventually acquiring it, but trying to use it against Bloody August doesn't prove to be wholly effective because, wouldn't you know it, you need other MacGuffins to make the MacGuffin work.
Oh, of course. Obviously. It's a fetch quest.
So the story sort of turns into this cross-country adventure of meeting different characters and going on different quests and whatnot. And there's a lot of filler in between.
Only in the old show or in the new one as well?
In the old show.
Okay.
The old show kind of is spread across, with, as far as I can tell, maybe about 5 or 6 novels, which would sound like, yeah, that's enough to get you through 24 episodes, which is the first season. And it's really not, because they give some things enough time to breathe, but other things not really. Because there's a few episodes during their cross-country journey where they've come across this village hidden in a forest where the people all worship these creatures called deep dragons, which are actually more like wolves. It's kind of strange, and they do a better...
Okay. What? All right.
They do a little better job of explaining that in the reboot, saying that, a dragon is a creature capable of using magic, therefore humanity is a type of dragon as well. And they sort of break it down among different races and creatures a bit more clearly in the reboot. That's like, oh, okay, you know what? Now when you say deep dragon and you're pointing at a fucking wolf, it doesn't sound so stupid.
So they could have just used, I don't know, a different term like Aspers or something, but because a dragon is more fantasy-like, they just use that, I guess.
Yes.
All right.
Yes. So, and like I said, part of this adventure is with this tribe in this forest, and there's this one guy who's not so good. He's trying to keep all of these people under his thumb. And when the deep dragons awaken and come to town, it's up to Orphen and crew to kind of help them. Cleo, being the very wise person that she is, picks up one of the baby wolves and takes it into her possession, names it Lecky, and, well, you have this baby magic wolf who's following you around, and Good idea. Great idea.
So far, I'm totally on board. I would do that.
I mean,
guilty.
It turns out to be not a terrible idea moving
There
on.
you go. Obviously, it's not a terrible idea. It's a fucking magic-using wolf. What else? I mean, this is perfect.
Because, I mean, Lecky turns out to be incredibly strong for a little wolf pup.
Yeah.
So, but, you know, from moment one, when Cleo picks up this little wolf, you get this feeling in your stomach like, oh, honey, what are you doing? But then it turns out, oh, okay, I guess maybe it wasn't a bad idea, but maybe it is, because we find out in season 2 that she sort of uses Lecky to her own ends in very stupid ways.
Well, as long as Lecky doesn't suffer because of it, well, then it's fine with me.
He's just sort of there to be the mascot.
Nice.
Doggo Wolfo. But yeah, so the journey brings Orphen and crew to, you know, the big whole thinger that is trying to get these gems that will power up the Sword of Baltanders. But as we said earlier, there's all these sorcerers from the Tower of Fangs who are out to stop Azalee before he can by any means necessary.
So he wants to change her back into her old self. They want to probably kill her.
Yeah, they want to just erase her in what happened.
Okay.
Because there's this scene that's actually in both versions of the show. Like I said, not a lot of the scenes line up because of the way things are told. But there's a scene where before all of this happens, like it's a flashback where they're like, oh, Azalee died. This is unfortunate. And they have this funeral for her. And Orphen is like, or excuse me, at this point, he's still Creelancelo. He's like, what the hell are you guys doing? Azalee isn't dead. Why are you burying what is literally an empty coffin?
It's a cover-up. It's a conspiracy.
Yeah, he smashes the coffin open and he says, look, what are you guys doing? You know what? Fuck all of you. From now on, I'm not Creelancelo. I'm Orphen. I'm going to do things my way. And he takes off from the Tower of Fangs. And one of the people who is leading the charge on this is a sorcerer named, and I hope you're ready for this name.
Probably not.
His name is Childman.
Thanks, Kojima.
You're not even wrong.
He's a man, but he's also, in his mind, a child. That's why I named him Childman. That is very clever, isn't it? Just like Die Hard Man, because he's a man who cannot be easily killed.
Childman Powderfield.
Yes, perfect. Thank you. Oh my god, that's so fucking stupid. I love it.
Thank you, Yoshinobu Akita.
Wow. Kindred spirits.
But yes, Childman, he leads his class of sorcerers out to find Bloody August / Azalee, which is curious because in the reboot they never refer to the dragon as Bloody August.
Okay.
Yeah, I don't quite understand. It's just strange to me.
Is that the official name in the books, or?
Oh yeah.
Okay, that's super weird.
Yeah, so I guess they just decided to drop the pretense in the remake and be like, yeah, the dragon is Azalee.
Well, is anyone else calling her that, or is Bloody August?
I mean, some side characters and some of the other characters do, but, you know, the people who are on the inside and know, you know, they have no reason to call it Bloody August all the time.
It makes sense in a way if it's not really a mystery anyway. I mean, it was set up in a way where it's like, okay, they're hunting this dragon, and you don't really get filled into why they do that. And then at a certain point in the show, there's this big reveal where, no, that's actually my friend whatever and Azalee, and I'm actually trying to get her back. I'm not trying to kill that dragon. So, you know, then it would make sense to call her a different name, call her Bloody August, I guess. But otherwise, it's just like, okay. And I think it's actually more beneficial to, you know, have the characters call her by name, then, because then you get like this emotional connection to her as a character still being a thing instead of just being that weird distant memory and just a dragon right now. So, okay. Yeah. I guess it makes sense to call her by name then. But
yeah, Childman is leading God damn it. A class of sorcerers who were basically a bunch of orphans, former classmates and friends to find and kill Azali. So we get this story of conflicting ideals where some of the characters are being led down the wrong way, but there's not an easy way for them to reconcile because they're just trying to do what their teacher is telling them. Like in particular, one of the more important characters is Orphan's classmate Hardia, who is another sorcerer, and he in order to conceal his identity, and I don't understand this, but sure, why not? He shows up in costume with this like black cape and cowl, calling himself black cape and cowl and a scythe, and he calls himself Black Tiger. This show's goofy.
I immediately have to think of that stupid PS4 game that.
Oh my god!
Fucking bad. Imagine that thing showing up in the fucking anime. Like, hey, I got a scythe now. Beware.
I mean, the thing about that is, Orphan sees through it immediately. He's like, Hardia, what are you doing? I'm not Hardia.
No, okay, so it's played for laughs. All right.
A little bit, yeah.
That's fine.
But, yes. Then the story kind of comes to a head when Childman has a direct confrontation with Azali. And there's this moment where, because of like the full moon, or no, I think it's a lunar eclipse. Where they are fighting, their magic is sealed, or parts of their magic are sealed, and Azali switches bodies with Childman. And we come to find out that Childman wasn't really out to kill Azali. He was out to he was trying to do the same thing as well, but the Tower of Fangs are the higher ups are a meddling bunch of fools, and they want to erase this. But Childman's trying to do his own thing on the DL, but
and get the power of the dragon, basically.
Pretty much on the surface, he's got to keep up appearances, though.
Sure.
But when Azali takes over Childman's body, he's like, "Oh, hey." There's a misunderstanding there because he's like, oh, yeah, no, Childman was totally out to get me. So now that I have his body, I'm going to fucking kill his ass.
Smart move.
And that doesn't play out as planned.
Oh, okay.
Because, oops. So moving on, there's this part earlier on where for some fucking reason, and I don't understand it now that I'm thinking about it. When I was thinking about it after the fact, I was like, why did you do this? Orphan leaves the Sword of Baltanders with Vulcan and Dorton for safekeeping because that seems like a good idea at the time. And when he goes to get it back, they're like, nah, fuck you, we're going to keep it. And it's like, And they spend like 2 or 3 episodes on this, and apparently that's an entire volume of the novels. And it's like, oh boy, jeez.
Seems like a bit of wasted space here and there, even in the novels.
Yes, it feels like filler in the anime and in the novel. And it's like, Jesus fucking, do you realize how many problems could be solved? Okay, all right.
So, I don't know if you'll get there later, but did they cut out some of that stuff out of the new adaptation where they were like,
yes,
good, okay.
I will get to parts of that too. Orphan takes the Sword of Baltander, and at this point, it's not known to really anyone outside of Azali and Childman that they've switched bodies. But Hardia has his suspicions, and when he finally realizes that Azali tries to off him, and he's like, yo, no, I'm getting the hell out of here, and I have to let Orphan know. So then the big confrontation comes in one of the other sorcerers at the Tower of Fangs, whose name you're gonna fucking love. Mm-hmm. His name is Flameheart.
Of course. Gotta say, not as good as Childman, but it's up there.
But yes, Flameheart, he has no idea.
Please tell me he uses elemental fire magic.
A little bit, but not a ton.
Okay. Not on brand.
I mean, bless his heart, he's voiced by Takahito Koyasu, so he goes nuts.
Very good.
But he's trying to be the hero. I'm the hero, and he goes to face Bloody August, and he gets fucking destroyed by the power of the Sword of Baltanders because he doesn't know how to use it. Oops, good job. But basically, it all wraps up in a child man's body gets destroyed in the big old ruckus. In the last minute before they switch bodies again, and Bloody August is defeated, but Azali is kind of sort of left. She kind of gets her old body back, but it's weird because Child Man is sort of now dead. Oops. Sorry about that, I guess.
No, not really.
Happy ending.
Okay.
The first season is fine in spite of all the goofy shit I talked about. And for the sake of trying to explain things, I skipped over some of the minute details, but there's a lot. It feels like there's too much filler, and even the stuff that's there feels like it could have been cut out. Like trying to get the sword back from the shitbirds, which, hey, that's not in the reboot. Huh, how about that? But apparently this show was such a hot commodity at the time, the network must have ordered a second season right away because it aired 3 months after the end of the first season.
Oh, okay. That's not even a full season break.
No. Yeah, so the second season rolls around and the novels are not caught up. They're still going on. So the entire second season is filler.
Ooh.
Entire second season.
Ooh, pass.
So the story of the second season, I'm just going to kind of gloss over it because it's not really worth talking about. The story revolves around this girl, Lycoris, who is supposed to be like this aide for like the these court mages. She's like, oh, I'm here to scout you out to join the court mages, Orphen. They've heard you're really strong and you'd be a really cool guy to help them out. And Orphen is just like, kid, what the fuck are you doing? Get away from me. Okay. And the entirety of the second season ends up being just Lycoris trying to drag him along into being this court mage, but hey, it turns out that Lycoris' sister Esperanza has been spying on them the whole time because their father McGregor has been playing with this reanimation magic that he made a deal with a devil with to save his daughters.
Sounds a bit convoluted.
It's a lot convoluted. Also, there's a lot more Vulcan and Dorton than there needs to be. A lot more.
Okay, that second season does not sound enticing at all.
One of the parts of the story is that... So Flameheart from the first season, he was stupid and he was the maker of his own demise through the actions of his idiocy, right? Right, okay, fine. Enter his twin brother, Flame Soul. Okay. And he's like, Orphen, this was all your fault. You killed my brother. And Orphen's like, no, bro, I actually didn't do that thing that you think I did.
Misunderstandings. You gotta love them.
Yeah, and one of the elders, who is basically Flameheart and Flame Soul's mother, she we don't see this in between because it kind of happens in between seasons, I guess, goes into shock over her son's death, and Flame Soul is all like, it's your fault that Mama ended up this way, and it's like, oh boy, here we go. So he's been supplied these like seeds, or no, they're called cores, excuse me, not cores. And he puts them into different creatures to like give them like these big magical buffs to hunt down Orphen, and they sort of appear intermittently to be an annoyance because why not? And eventually he says, you know what, fuck it. After Esperanza literally destroys him, Jesus Christ, he puts his spirit into his mother's body and fuses their magical energy together that way. And he's like, it's the perfect fusion of mother and son united. And it's like, fucking shut up, dude. It's so stupid. The entirety of the second season is a dumb waste of time. Why does it exist?
Money.
Yes, good answer. Thank you. So, about the only good thing I could say about the second season is, and I showed you this, that the first intro theme to it is a fucking bop, and it has it's a bad precedent for the show because it has the best animation across both seasons.
Oh no.
Yeah. So magic spells in the first season just end up looking like blasts of energy because that's how Dragon Ball did it, and it looks bland and boring and like, Jesus Christ, you couldn't do something with that. In the second season, they kind of tried to spice it up by giving the spells like different effects and animations, and they were so proud of this one animation that Orphen has to cast this one spell that they used it over and over and over and over, and you get the idea.
Yes.
I mean, I will say one of the interesting things about the in-universe magic is that before a spell is cast, the characters have like a short incantation they have to say, which is cool. The big one that that went around was that Orphen holds his hand out and he says, "Sword of Light, whom I do release," and he's just like, kaboom! It's like his big kill button. But yeah, that. So the original was, I would honestly say the original was aggressively all right. The second season, don't fucking bother. Jesus Christ, don't fucking bother. And then there's the reboot. The reboot, and this might be a red flag for some people, was handled by your friends and mine at Studio Dean.
Well, it depends. Did they get a budget?
Honestly, it feels like it.
Oof.
And maybe this is setting the bar a little low. But I feel like this is some of the better work they've done since Konosuba, because it doesn't always look great, and I will openly admit to that. But compared to the originals, it's at least consistent.
It probably looks at least better than Seven Deadly Sins Season 3.
Oh, gee, boy. Like, I mean, I think I was going back and forth with a friend of mine, and she was sort of like, yeah, I mean, the character designs are kind of and I mean, but they kind of were to begin with. Let's be honest with ourselves. I feel like though in this in the reboot, they kind of culled back the detail on the characters a little bit, because in the original the character designs were like overly detailed, and I think that's what was some of its undoing. And this way they were able to like contain it a little bit and make it, keep that consistency throughout. The story in the reboot, which is parts of it are largely the same because, of course, opens on us seeing the origins of Azali using the Sword of Baltanders and turning into the dragon. So it's like, oh, so we have our setup straight away. We don't have to wait 10, 12 episodes to see that's what happened, because number one, the original series was 24 episodes in what should have been 12 episodes. And this new series was 13 episodes, and it did a whole lot more with 13 because they were like, hey, let's just keep the plot moving. We have a story here that we can tell that's already done. And they just moved from plot point to plot point. I feel like the reboot, honestly, is stronger for it because it's paced way faster and way better. So you're not sitting there with 2 to 3 episodes of Orphen, Cleo, Magic, and those two little shitbirds wandering the countryside like, yep, this is crucial to the plot. That's for sure.
Well, do the main characters get enough time to develop and breathe? Because sometimes when you have reboots and when you say the pacing is quick enough and everything, you sometimes lose a bit of the nice character moments and everything. So is that the case in the reboot, or does it feel like every important character gets enough time?
I mean, there's a little bit of cutbacks on that, but we still kind of get to know we get to know Magic decently enough, I guess. Cleo is backseated a little bit, but we still have her moments with her and Lecky, so that's
good.
That's fine. Vulcan and Dorton, they're barely in there. It's great. They're barely there.
Thank God.
They're in maybe like 2 or 3 episodes. In the first episode, they're like, hey, we're going to pull one over on the Everlasting family. And Orphan's like, I don't know why I'm going along with you shitheads, but I guess I will for now. And then when the plot goes sideways, he's like, all right, I'm not dealing with you idiots anymore. And just basically kicks them to the curb. They have like short appearances after that, but they're like gone. They're gone. Who cares about them? Nobody liked them.
Seems to be the right choice.
Yes. There's no chasing them around for 2 to 3 episodes I gotta get the sword back. Oh, God. So we hit a lot of the same beats from before, where it's Azalee turns into a dragon. The Tower of Fangs is out to get her. Orphan wants to help save her. There's this journey back to the Tower of Fangs through the forest of the deep dragon wolf cult thing. I'm sort of paring it down a lot. We see Childman and Azalee doing the switcheroo, and then Azalee's defeat at the Hands of Orphen, and her getting her body back and sort of going into hiding. And then what's interesting is that, that's not the end. We actually get to see bits of the story beyond that. Which was like, oh, I thought it would just be like a retread and nothing more. But, I think they were like, hey, people who are familiar with the original are like, yes, we've seen this. We want more. We want to go past that. And they did go past that, because there's a story that involves a fake Krelancelo appearing and assassinating members of the Tower of Fangs and sort of framing Orphan for these misdeeds. And he has to, go out and clear his name. And it turns out that, this fake Krelancelo is basically this magic puppet that Azalee has set out to do her bidding, because, hey, the Tower of Fangs wanted to ruin me, so I'm going to get back at them, which, probably not the right course of action, but it's fair.
Does she still consider Orphan part of the Tower of Fangs or something? Or why is she, using him for, I thought they were friends or something.
Because Orphan was raised to be the Sorcerous Stabber. That was his title. And why not use someone who was the best at what he did?
Oh, okay. That makes sense, I guess. Yeah.
A little bit. I mean, it was weird because Orphan was sort of groomed to be this sort of assassin. But when he saw what was, the aim of what was going on, he was sort of like, I'm not sure if this is something I want to be a part of. And he wouldn't really kill anyone. And that was another part that we learned later of why he wanted to get away from the Tower of Fangs. So, all right, he wanted to separate from that as much as he could. But yeah, so the last quarter of the season, quarter-ish, deals with that and trying to reconcile with Azalee, but also this one other class of the Tower of the Fangs, the war class, who are basically like, yeah, no, we're out to kill the child man class. So, you can either fight us or we'll just kill you all. And Orphan's like, listen, bro, the child man class, all of us, we're pretty fucking strong. Don't start with us. And there's this big showdown, and it's actually kind of interesting to watch play out. So, because there's a lot of deception and just trickery at play where they're all trying to outplay each other. And I thought it was actually really interesting and pretty well presented.
It sounds cool. I like stuff like that.
Yeah. Honestly, for as lukewarm as I was on the original and very, very blizzard ice cold on the second season, because holy shit, the reboot was a lot stronger than I was expecting, because it got in there, It told its story. It told more of its story. Apparently, there's a second season coming, so I want to see. I'm interested in seeing how the story plays out after that. So, I mean,
that would have been my next question. Like, how much of the novels is left? So, how many more seasons would we get if they, adapted all the material this time around?
I want to say they got maybe like 8 or 9 novels in. I forget how many. I know I looked up how many novels there were in the series. But they also kind of condensed the novels down in where they took several of them and put them into like larger volumes. So the novels now, with the reissues that came like years later, have different content in them. So I think they went through like about, now with the condensed versions, like about 4 of the novels, and I think there might be like 2 or 3 more. So I could see them putting in like another season worth of story, which should be cool.
Okay.
I think some people will probably say the reboot is not as faithful because of the cuts it made, mainly for the sake of time and for the sake of not annoying the hell out of me with those 2 goddamn shitbirds.
That's an old ass argument. There are some fans out there, also when it comes to adapting from manga to anime, that just want the panels to be put on the fucking screen and want it to be as faithful as possible. And I'm always the guy just sticking up for anime adaptations that actually adapt. Like we often quote Jeff Thu on this, adapt or die. Mm-hmm. But that actually make sensible changes if there is stuff that needs to be changed to make the adaptation work better in anime form, because manga and anime are not the same. Light novels and anime are not the same. There are things that should be changed so the story works better as an anime. So I'm always fine with stuff being cut or changed around time-wise or whatever, so that it works, that it flows better in anime form. And like you said before, the original novels apparently have a lot of dead air in them, so why not cut that out?
Yeah, definitely it seemed like it from like the synopses I read of the novels, because, oh boy. I mean, I feel like the crew writing this, and a bunch of them have worked on a bunch of shows we've talked about before, a bunch of really good ones. I'll start rattling off names in a second. I feel like they understood what was more key to this story than other parts, and they were able to be like, yeah, no, we don't need this. We can tell the story without it, which was like, cool, all right. Because we had people who worked on shows like Free, The Pilot's Love Song, Violet Evergarden, Yowamushi Pedal, Railgun, a whole bunch of Pretty Cure, Persona 4, Sweetness and Lightning, a bunch of Yu-Gi-Oh! So we have a crew that's like, that definitely understands that. So, I forgot to mention that about the spell animations in the reboot. They actually look really cool, because that whole maybe it's just a me thing, but the whole like magical circle animation thing, that aesthetic of spell casting is a part of it, where the character chants their incantation and like the spell circle appears on their hands. I don't know why I'm doing the motion in real life. I don't have a camera set up. But they hold their hand out with the spell circle over their hand, and then there's an actual unique effect to the spell that they're casting. It's like, yeah, okay, I have an actual idea of how these spells look and what they're supposed to be, and not just generic energy blast number 33. It looks like, I keep saying magic, I'm sorry, it looks like sorcery. It looks like what it was probably originally envisioned to be, and I thought that was really cool, and I really liked that a lot.
Nice.
But yeah, Orphen, the original, I don't know how the original I don't know if the original has aged all that well, to be honest. I mean, like we've said, it's 22 years old at this point. There's parts of the story that definitely were like, hey, this can go.
It sounds like a 90s ass anime adaptation of, a story like that. And,
Yes.
there are still lingering remnants of that in the new adaptation, as far as I could tell from the first episode, just in terms of atmosphere, style, character dialogue, character archetypes, all that stuff. But it sounds like the negative aspects are more prevalent in the old adaptation.
Yeah, I mean, the 90s flavor does still come through just enough in the reboot for you to be like, yeah, this is when this story was written. But
and that can also have a kind of charm to it. I mean, some people just go to these kinds of old ass adaptations to get that feeling. I mean, I would say Ushio and Taurus, a show I like just because it felt so kind of old-timey in a way and was handled pretty well in that regard. So, if it's done well, that can feel like a nice throwback thing.
Oh, yeah, definitely. So, honestly, if you're going to watch the show, if you're interested in it, I would probably say, yeah, check out the reboot. If you want to see the series' roots, I mean, the original exists and it's there. I realize it's not a ringing endorsement on the original, which it's not supposed to be. Sorry, but if you're so inclined, the original, both seasons of it are available to watch on High Dive, and if you want to watch the reboot, it's on Funimation now, and I do eagerly anticipate seeing more of this because I'd like to see more of the story adapted into this form and see how it turns out.
Since earliest childhood, Midori Asakusa has dreamed about creating her own anime. She has already hundreds of worlds and designs in her head, but was always too tepid to take the final step of turning her concepts into a full-fledged project. By pure chance, after enrolling at her new high school, she meets Tsubame Mizusaki, an up-and-coming model and socialite who is secretly dreaming of becoming an animator. The two girls instantly connect, and their common passion sparks untamable fires of imagination, which don't go unnoticed by Midori's money-loving best friend Sayaka Kanamori. After joining forces, the energetic trio start the Eizouken, or Film Research Club, and slowly work towards making their greatest world a reality. So yeah, Keep Your Hands Off Eizouken is based on a manga by Sumito Owara, which began serialization in July 2016, is still running, and currently counts 5 volumes. It also got a live-action TV miniseries that ran for 6 episodes from April to May this year, and there's also a live-action movie in the works that was supposed to release on May 15th, but I don't know if that actually happened due to the pandemic and everything. But it's at least planned, so yeah, there's that. But this is not live-action brain freeze, so let's talk about the anime adaptation, which was done by Science Saru, a rather new studio, which I probably have mentioned before, maybe because it was established by prolific director Masaki Yuasa, who, among many other things, directed Devilman Crybaby, a show I reviewed and respect a lot. Not necessarily like. Definitely don't want to watch that again anytime soon, but yeah, Science Saru did the animation production on that as well, also the animation on some of the OPs for Garo the Animation and Garo Vanishing Line, and naturally the 2 Yuasa movies, Lou Over the Wall and Ride Your Wave. And as expected, Masaki Yuasa also handled the direction and series composition for Eizouken as well. And as with the other stuff I've seen from him, this is again a very tight production. No wasted dialogue, quick satisfying pacing, the animation probably being the main draw aside from the characters. The character models don't look as flat and loose as the ones in Devilman Crybaby, for example. Body movement is fluid, we get incredibly expressive faces, pretty cartoony most of the time. There is a lot of colorful scenery in the show. And once we get into the actual let's come up with new ideas for our anime phase of the show and enter the mind space of Midori and Tsubame, things get super wild and impressive on an animation level. But we'll get to that momentarily. The script was handled by Yuichiro Kido, who has also done some script work for 91 Days, After the Rain, the 2 seasons of The New Fruits Baskets, Dr. Stone, some Seven Deadly Sins stuff. So yeah, definitely put the work in so far. And like I said, the script of this is really good, really snappy dialogue, not a lot of dead air, only when it needs to be to let the animation breathe and the imagination of the characters come to life. And just, have those scenes play along with the music and just lull you into this great atmosphere that the show is building. So yeah, let's talk about our 3 main characters first. We have Midori, who is our main, who's this kind of small gremlin in a way, which is, a point of contention when it comes to the live action adaptations, because all the actresses are super pretty. And I don't feel like Midori is this kind of super pretty high school girl. She comes across to me like this very introverted, small in stature, closet nerd, which shouldn't be this like supermodel, super actress character. So seeing, all the actors in a live action adaptation being like these super pretty girls doesn't feel right to me. I feel like the only character who should be that is Tsubame, because she is a model in the show. So there's that. But yeah, Midori is a fun character. Like I said, kind of introverted, very hesitant to speak her mind and everything. And she wants to be a concept designer. She came up with these intricate sketchbook drawings for detailed fantasy versions of the area where she lives as a kid. And a bunch of stuff like that. You see immediately when you see her, she goes into full imagination mode, full creativity mode, and you got kind of a, let's say, creative genius on your hands here, at least when it comes to, coming up with concepts, coming up with ideas, coming up with new worlds, new designs, everything to dive into. And the second main character is Tsubame, who, like I alluded to in the summary, wants to be an animator and has a rich family who, as it seems in the beginning of the show, try to stop her from pursuing that career path because, they got other plans for her. She's she's kind of well off and she should aspire to, in their eyes, probably a higher calling than being an animator. Because as we all know, usually being an animator doesn't really pay. It's hard to make a living of that in a way without working yourself to death. And, they probably want her to be better off than that. So initially, she can't join the anime club because Tsubame's parents won't let her. And because she and the other girls want to come up with their own project, they kind of con a teacher into letting them create a live action feature film club, which they are going to use to make anime. It's a big, long con. And it's fun how it's set up. And of course, they have to keep up appearances to an extent. But yeah, it's fun. And the person that is kind of making all of that happen is the third one of the bunch, Sayaka, who is not interested in anime, but is Midori's best friend. And the way they became friends is also a very, very endearing story, which comes a bit later in the show. And of course, she's in it for the possible money because she's like, hey, these girls are really good at what they do, and if I put them together, we can make magic happen. So there's money in that, if we do this right, if we market this right. So let's do that. So she tells Midori to make friends with Tsubame because, she smells money. But that is not the only reason. She has a hunch that these two, like I said, can create magic together, but can also become good friends and, get each other to come out of their shells and live their passion. And it's not that clear initially, but you also get the feeling that that is very important to her because Midori is very important to her. And that's really cool. And, she eggs her on and then shit happens as it should be. Even like from a bunch of small things, she has a knack for keeping things running. Like even from small things like shaking a washing machine that isn't working immediately. That's like a small bit of foreshadowing when it comes to later events in the show that she has like maybe a self-taught gift or she has, a gift she was born with. It's quite clear, but she just knows how to make people do things that they otherwise maybe wouldn't to make things happen. She's very talented in that regard. She's the producer, right? That's what this is all about. This is basically an animation team, concept designer, character designer / animator, and the producer. And you need all three of those to make a good anime, at least on the small scale. Of course, in reality, with an actual production, you need a lot more people. But on a small scale, this are the three pillars you need to make shit happen. So we got these three pillars right here. And as expected from this show, there are a bunch of anime references. Just a small example, Midori was inspired by that universe's version of Future Boy Conan. That was like the first anime that she just ingested as anime, and that made her like spark her imagination immediately. She saw these characters, she saw this world, she saw the machinery in that world, in that anime, and was like, holy shit, I have a million ideas. I want to put that on paper too. I want to put my own version of that on paper. So that happens. And there are a bunch more of these references to classic anime stuff in there by characters talking about that stuff, mostly Midori and Tsubame, or certain small hints here and there and visual references to classic anime stuff. Which, if you are familiar with a bunch of these, this is quite a treat. And I like that the show is putting the work in to make those happen. And yeah, like I said before, Midori and Tsubame burst with passion and creativity and want to draw whatever shit they're interested in. And Sayaka basically takes on a producer role and tries to steer their unshackled potential into a coherent vision. For example, she asks them to decide on a genre first. She also thinks of ways to procure money to fix their clubhouse and get them the necessary materials for their work on the anime project. She also, just as a side note, has a ridiculously cool backpack that looks like two red sneakers smashed together for some reason. Yeah, it's like super, I don't know. It just stuck out to me. It was like, oh, holy shit, that is a very creative backpack. But it also fits her character, right? She's the one putting the shoes on. She's the one going the extra mile to make this shit happen. So it makes sense that her fucking backpack are like two shoes. So I don't know if that was the intention or if that was just coincidence and it looked cool to the people coming up with it, but it just fits that character. And like I said before, she also is the one who kind of cons the teacher into allow them to make anime even though they are in the film club, because the actual anime club is researching anime instead of making them. So she's like, yeah, but we actually make film, and anime is some kind of film. So this is technically okay in terms of what our club is called. And it's different from the anime, of what the anime club is doing, which is basically just fucking around and reading manga and watching anime. So she's definitely the brain of the operation and the MVP, even though not the creative force. And since Midori and Tsubame are such creative people, like I said, Sayaka has to steer them, has to rein them in, because a lot of their ideas are just too expensive and could just not be done in the time frame of the production they're trying to tackle. And they are so fucking impulsive and filled to the brim with creativity that even simple things like decorating their clubhouse would get out of hand if Sayaka wouldn't intervene. And yeah, she's also great at negotiating and acquiring tools and support from other clubs, mostly through blackmail, but hey,
if it works, it works.
Yeah, the ends justify the means, I guess. And like I alluded to earlier, Midori and Tsubame are like hyper-passionate ADHD clusterfucks. They are easily distracted by butterflies or raccoon dogs or whatever, anything they can think of to put in their fucking story. Midori tends to come up with a plethora of random new stuff instead of focusing on a current project, because any new real-world impression kicks her imagination into overdrive. And as you can imagine, this can become a bit of a problem, especially when they need to do something as simple as repairing the roof of their clubhouse to keep their materials from getting wet from the rain. And they drift off imagining they are repairing a space station, and Midori comes up with these ginormous lore and exposition dumps on the fly, why they have to use certain tools and how they would work in outer space, and so on. It's endearing, but must also be incredibly exhausting for the only person of that group that is firmly grounded in reality, which is again Sayaka, who has to make an effort to focus their creative energy on a sustainable goal. On the other hand, Tsubame and Midori are, without a doubt, incredibly gifted. Anything they look at in normal life can give them an idea for a new story or design or concept or character. And in my opinion, it's super inspiring to see their brains work. And they're super likable.
I can't imagine being able to just look at something and be like, I have a new idea. That's some wild shit to me.
After you watch that show, you get a basic idea of how these people work that are gifted in that way. And it's amazing. It's super fun to watch. And it makes you a bit envious if you are not capable of that to that extent. And like I said, they're super likable, they're funny, they're sympathetic, they're relatable to boot. They're all great characters. Another interesting thing about one of the characters, I love how the series shows us that Tsubame was obsessed with how things move and how that translates to screen very early in her childhood. Like she studies body movement during the tear ceremony with her grandma, like simple things like her grandma just throwing out the rest of the tea and the water moving in the air. And she's like, Grandma, do it again. I want to see how the water just moves in the air. And then she tries to copy that and draw that and try to animate that. And it's just like, it's like this basic interest in movement that later translates into her passion for animation. And you understand where she's coming from. You can understand what that spark was that made her turn her goals to becoming an animator. And, you know, during modeling class, she sees the other models moving and she's like, okay, how would that look in animation? And while watching TV and so on and so on. And to see that progress and how she gets better at drawing stuff and understanding movement and everything is super interesting to watch, because it feels like, okay, this is definitely how this works for some people who get into animation, who want to become animators. This is how their childhood looked like, or at a certain point, this is how their life looked like, because they were interested in this kind of stuff. And again, super interesting, super close to life, even though the style of the show is more cartoony. But everything in terms of character development and when it comes to the passion of animation, of drawing, of coming up with concepts and everything like that feels very, very real to life and very relatable. And the project they start working on together actually helps them to grow as people and become better at their chosen passion too. Like Midori has to learn how to accurately convey which backgrounds she needs to the art club, which is not her forte, like actually explaining to people what she needs, what she wants. Since all of it is clear to her in her head, she doesn't know how to make other people understand what exactly she needs, and that she has to insist on sticking to certain guidelines or they'll do what they want. And Midori says it's easier for her to do the work herself than to explain it to other people. And boy, does that sound familiar. You know, that is a thing that I am also familiar with, you know, when it comes to maybe at work teaching new people stuff that you are very familiar with and that they are not. And it's frustrating if sometimes, you know, they don't get it right from the get-go or there are mistakes being made. And yeah, no, I'll just do it myself because then this will be faster than explaining it again to people. But as MVP Sayaka correctly points out to her, a director needs to be able to give directions to other people. Because he or she can't do all the work by him or herself, because that will fucking kill you. And that's not possible in the time frame. And since Midori is not only a concept designer, but also later takes on the role as a director, she needs to learn how to do that. That is part of her job now. So, again, Sayaka makes it happen by pointing that out to her friend, and that's great. Another interesting aspect that is not super heavily featured in the show, maybe only in the beginning and in the end, but still regardless, this is kind of an emotionally important part, is that Tsubame is really anxious about her parents finding out that she does anime stuff now, because, you know, she is afraid to be forbidden to work on it further. And without giving anything away, that part of the story has a really satisfying, emotional, but down-to-earth payoff that I really appreciated. And yeah, I was just super satisfied with it. It was like, oh yeah, this is a neat ending to that character arc. Yeah, and I thought the show handled that really well. Sayaka also gets a neat character building flashback. She had a painful first-hand experience that taught her that high quality isn't enough when it comes to products and making money and selling things. You need to promote your stuff properly to achieve real success. And, you know, she, of course, wants to put that into this anime project, wants to make the stuff happen for herself, for her friends. And this is like an important linchpin for her learning experience. I mean, it's clear from the get-go that she is not just a money-grubbing asshole, but that flashback I'm referring to makes her even more relatable and sympathetic. She's a great character. I love her. I think she's probably my favorite of the bunch. Which I didn't expect, because, you know, you would be like, oh, the director and animator, this is the most interesting thing. But no, actually, in this story, it's kind of the producer. It's fun. It's fun. So yeah, let's talk about the, in my opinion, most engaging part, I guess, or at least the other engaging part, kind of heart of the show. The process of creating art from your fucking brain. Because the whole show is basically Masaki Yuasa's love letter to animation. And that fact is constantly jumping out of the screen and right into your face, and it is glorious. Like, the series oozes with creativity left and right. This already starts with the architecture of their school campus, which looks like some kind of fantasy dungeon from a manga or an RPG or whatever. And Midori even remarks on that. It's like, this is the reason I wanted to go here, because this will spark my imagination and creativity. And she immediately comes up with a fun world map with interesting, like, imaginary underground machinations and everything. And it's super cool. And has, like, this stick figure version of her just fucking traversing this dungeon. Like, in general, the series is constantly combining the surreal, imaginative imagery from Midori's and Super Miss Mindspace with the actual imagery of their real world. And you might wonder, well, since this is all animation, how do you spot the difference? Well, usually the imaginary stuff has this rough sketch look to it, with muted colors and softer lines and everything, so it's easy to spot. It looks like more from partially from a child's picture book or a sketchbook, because that's what it's from, basically. Unless Yuasa doesn't want you to, so he can give certain scenes an even more uncanny atmosphere. Sometimes imaginary elements are subtly put into the background or stuff like that. Or just come up here and there and like, wait, was that real, or was that imagination? So that sometimes happens too. But yeah, reality and fantasy are spliced together on a regular basis, not only when Midori and Suwame make up stuff in their mind for visualizing their project ideas, but also when the student council or security club are involved. And once the characters step into the concept art they created and basically bring to life a completely new surreal world from their mind around them on the fly, it's a sight to behold. Easy breezy is the tagline from the OP, and I'm definitely going to make this the title of this episode. But that's also kind of the way these characters create. For example, they are basically in the sketchbook version, coming up with new shit, and they blow a hole into a building in their creative mind space to make a windmill turn, because they're like, okay, how do we do this? How do we get wind to this windmill? Well, let's just get rid of these buildings that are there, and then wind will come through, and then the windmill will turn. Okay, and they just do that on the fly. And there are notes in the drawings they enter in their minds to explain stuff like animals that they have come up with that are not native to our real world, so they have to explain what they are and how they work. A lot of the sound effects in the animated dream sequences are onomatopoeia voiced by the actors, which is charming as fuck. It's like basically them going brum, 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 or when machinery is happening. And it's super cute. And yeah, you actually learn a lot about drawing and animation techniques too, while they, explore the imaginary worlds they create. They basically explain that shit and, how you achieve certain effects with certain ways to draw and certain techniques. Like, they create and change their worlds, stories, and designs while playing with the concepts in their head. But instead of seeing them just talk about it, we actually see them do those things in that surreal animation world. Like, what could go wrong during the start of our made-up spaceship? Well, let's come up with shit that could go wrong to make the ship feel more realistic. What if that part explodes? Well, we need a hatch to fix it. Then let's draw a hatch right there. Like, they add new mechanic details on the fly while they explore those questions automatically by going on an adventure in their minds with these concepts, with these models, with these characters. Like, they are constantly imagining scenarios that could be exciting where stuff goes wrong. And that's what I mean by easy breezy. It just happens to them. They just fucking get into this world, they live in it for a while, and they come up with all the shit that makes this world work. Like, the creativity and imagination is framed perfectly and makes you believe that in their heads, they're actually coming up with this world by actually living it. And I think that's fantastic. I think the way the anime goes across into realizing that and making you understand that and making you understand the mind of a creative person is just, I don't think I've seen this before in this way. And I was super impressed with that. And the show is also really good at showing you how much work goes into 10 seconds of animation, you know, during the project later. Like, how much thought needs to be put into certain things, how much frames need to be drawn, how many storyboards, how much work needs to go into the backgrounds, everything. Like, how much stuff there is to do to actually give you an impressive action sequence or something like that. But also how much shortcuts and tricks you have to employ to make something come together under a strict time limit. Like, Midori and Tsubame kind of constantly want to go big, but they don't have enough manpower or experience to make it work without cutting some corners. And that's how shit works in real anime production too. Sometimes it doesn't work out. Like, do you want to do this scene with just keyframes or do you want colored backgrounds? You have to choose. You can't have both. There are a bunch of compromises to be made. And it's incredibly frustrating to not being able to fully realize their original vision, of course. You go through that creative learning experience with the characters, which is incredibly eye-opening and sobering. To directly quote Midori at one point, when she and Sayaka talk about finishing the project, I'd say it's less about finishing or completing the project and more the outcome of passion crashing against compromise and resignation.
That's real.
That's super real. There's a lot of painful earnestness in that line that probably has been uttered or at least thought of by a lot of people working in animation over the years. Yeah, and all that stuff coming together makes you learn to appreciate the magic of animation on a whole new level. But you definitely need some basic interest in that subject matter as well.
Oh, definitely.
If you don't care about the mechanics, tools, and processes behind anime production, this might not be for you. Because while it might be very playful and creative in showing those off, it's still very in love with the minutiae of it all. And that might be a bit too detailed for some people who expect a more eventful plot. Maybe. Because this is basically a work anime, kinda. That being said, I personally, as someone who couldn't get into how Shirobako tackled a story about producing anime, was thoroughly entertained by the approach this show took. Yes, there is a focus on the details, but only so that you can really learn certain basics that it can build later story developments on, without having to repeat them or do too much exposition later on. And it's just so engaging to see Midori's and Tsubame's creativity just literally leaping off the screen and blowing everyone in the crowd away in the audience. And they are so fixated on what they could do better after seeing their first promo on a big screen that they don't even pay attention if this student council was impressed enough to approve their club budget. And that passion is so endearing and infectious. And I loved it. I thought it was great. And John, you watched Shirobako and liked it. So are you more interested in the realistic production aspect of anime than in the creative one? Or why didn't you feel like checking out Eizouken?
I mean, I guess that's probably a good way to put it. I mean, because, I don't think either honestly, I don't think either one of these stories probably hits, 100% the reality of,
No.
making an anime. But Shirobako felt like a lot more of the nuts and bolts, the, putting the frames together, getting it produced, sending it off to broadcast, having to deal with the freelancers who work on the outside, who may or may not want to work with you because of past work history, and that sort of thing. Just, I don't know. I watched clips of Eizouken and I was like, hey, it seems neat, but I was also at the time, I've been trying not to overload on things to watch, to be
Which
honest.
Is smart.
I feel like then I sort of start to lose focus on things I want to talk about. And don't you worry, one of the guys I work with was like, hey, have you watched Eizouken? Have you watched it? When are you going to watch it? And I was like, are you going to watch Symphogear? And the answer was no on both sides. So... But no, I do appreciate what Eizouken is trying to do, and how it's trying to present itself. And from what I saw, it looks incredibly lavishly produced and just like this incredible love letter to the medium. And
oh yeah, it definitely is.
And there was even some clips I saw of the live action one where they were showing like some of the VFX breakdown, and it was like, dang, how much was put into that version of the story as well. So, I appreciate it. I just skipped on it. I mean, considering how many shows are now on break, I should be watching some older stuff or stuff that I was previously interested in and didn't have time for. So, maybe I'll try and get around to it, but I'm not going to make any promises. So, for now, I've really enjoyed what Shirobako was all about.
Yeah. I mean, and to each their own, right?
Yeah.
It's just probably, and there, like I said, there are some things highlighted in terms of production in this too, but it's like on a smaller scale, while Shirobako is like, no, this is an actual anime production, this is an actual studio, and this is like a high school fan project. With 3 people at the core with a bit of help on the side from the other clubs. But it feels more like a hobby thing, with a lot of passion though. And, I think the creative side of it, like the focus on the creative aspect was the thing that drew me in. And because it's, it's more anime, because it's got, more, actual anime imagery in it and action shit and stuff like that. And, the characters actually taking part in that stuff in their mind space. And so I guess that's why it tickled my interest more. But yeah, it's a short show. It's 12 episodes. So for any people kind of who like anime enough to be interested in the actual process of animation and the creative process, I would recommend watch this show. It's not a big time investment. It's a lot of fun. It's got great characters, amazing visuals. And yeah, I also like the ending of the show a lot. Like the theme of the final animation project puts a nice bow on the underlying themes of the entire show. And seeing all the different impressions and influences from earlier episodes being realized in their final project is pretty magical, in my opinion. So yeah, I was very content with the show. It's not one of my, oh my god, this is my favorite thing of all time now or something like that. But I really enjoyed that show for what it was and how creative it went about, portraying creativity. So yeah, since the manga is still running, I wonder if we'll get any more anime material. But in all honesty, even though it would be welcome, because these characters and the world are so damn fun, it is not necessary at all. Like, this is a perfect little ode to animation, which ends in a kind of perfect way, in the pretty much perfect place. So if we don't get anything more, I'm totally fine with that. And yeah, can't add anything more to that. Go and watch Eizouken. It's a lot of fun. It's, like I said, a love letter to animation. And if you love animation, you will probably love something about it too. Yeah, hooray for art. And that is a wrap on the 93rd episode of Anime Brain Freeze. All the music in our show is from the Double Dragon Neon soundtrack by the amazing Jake Kaufman. Please go to vit.bandcamp.com and check out his awesome work. Our show is available on most of the popular podcast services, but it's always worth visiting animebrainfreeze.com for our review index and more. Leave us comments and questions on YouTube, follow us on Twitter at AnimeBrainFreeze, or send an email to animebrainfreeze@gmail.com. We would love to read your feedback. Thanks for tuning in, we hope you had a good time, and please join us again on our next episode. Macht's gut!
Take care, everybody. Next time on Anime Brain Freeze.
Paranormal investigations.
The search for humanity creates an unlikely family.
And, to catch the culprit, you have to face the demons lurking in your own mind.